This is another problem with economics. I referred to this thing called neoclassical economics, where we're all automata and we're all profit maximizing or utility maximizing.
Yeah.
But one of the assumptions that underpins that is that somehow we have collapsed everything into one single metric, which is the price, right? And we don't, right? You look at a brand and you're buying that brand because of other things that you might value. And it's not about the price. Any decent marketer will tell you that you set the price based on brand expectations. Let's go back to Abcam, selling antibodies. There was a huge pressure on us at the beginning to discount those antibodies because we actually had enormous margin. I mean, we're talking about 80%, 85% margin on an antibody, right? Mm-hmm. Right? And so you could afford to cut the price.
Yeah.
And the decision was taken, I was very insistent on this, not to cut prices because you were signaling to the market that these were quality antibodies. One of the other things we did was provide lots of information about whether these antibodies worked or not, saving the researcher time because if they looked through the data sheet, they could work out whether it was going to work or not, right? And if it didn't work, we gave them their money back. No questions asked. And we also gave them a present. If they wrote up why it went wrong, we gave them a present, which meant that we could maintain the price really very high in the marketplace. There was no need to discount, absolutely no need to discount at all. So I can explain our pricing in terms of somehow some kind of rational economic model.
Yeah.
But it's much more complicated, as you know and I know, and your listeners know. They're not basing everything on price. And, there's what beer brand says, reassuringly expensive.
Yeah, Stella Artois. Yeah.
Stella Artois. Now, Stella Artois in France is a standard brand.
Yeah.
So if they were going to do it in the United Kingdom, what they did was they shifted the price up so that everybody thought the beer tasted better.
Yeah.
By the way, I did look at the Abcam website this week, and I was so depressed because when we had the company many years ago, we had Dolly the sheep, who was on all our packaging and on all our branding, and it was playful and it played to scientists, and there were lots of silly geeky puns and all sorts of stuff like that. When I went to the Abcam website this week, it was just plain colour, corporate, and the first thing that came up was a banner that said 20% discount. And I went, oh.
So who are you selling the antibodies to? Scientists or the public?
Scientists. Yeah, it's scientists who need them for research, right?
With you.
So you tune your brand to those scientists. You provide them with little toys that they can have on their laboratory benches, right? All those kinds of things that brand and, that kind of... You're playful but serious, right? We're with you, right? We're delivering something that really works for you as a scientist. We understand your problems. We're going to do everything we can to make your experiment successful. But we will do it in the same way that scientists do. It's the, whatever that comedy show is, the American comedy show is where they have all these geeks on there, So that's exactly how you match what you're doing.
What you said, David, about you're an economist who sees things in practice and then sees if there's a theory. Is that right?
Yeah, economists see something working in practice and wonder how on earth they could explain it in theory.
What would those be for restaurants? What is there examples of that in restaurants?
I'm in awe of the way in which Jacob manages to produce fabulous food within the very tight constraints on a budget for a restaurant. Now, and your listeners will understand how tight the margins are in a restaurant. And it's one of the biggest reasons, it's not the only reason, but several for restaurant failures. And a lot of restaurants go out of business. But you've got these fixed costs, and then you've got the variable costs, which are partly staff, but mostly about the food. And how do you keep the quality of the food and the quality of what you're doing really high, but staying within the budget? And how does that get communicated to the people coming into the restaurant? How do you project the values? How do you make people happy? Because at the end of the day, they're going to match their entire experience of the restaurant with the bill at the end, and they're going to go, was that really worth it? Did that match, or was the quality better than what I would have expected to pay? And that issue is one of multiple things that you have to do in a restaurant to actually be able to deliver that to the clients who are sitting at the table and enjoying the food.
Any other interesting sort of models or you've seen in restaurants and or food businesses?
Well, I mean, the restaurant, a menu design, for example. Let's look at something working in practice. What does it work in theory? Well, I'd like to understand. I don't understand enough about the psychology of how you arrange things on menus in order to then, from a restaurant's point of view, maximise your revenue, maximise your profit.
So Sam Tatum, who has worked with Rory, has got a great book called Evolutionary Ideas, and he's got this theory called, like behavioural science theory, called chunking. So it's like you can either chunk up or chunk down. So chunking up would be something like Chinese five spice.
Right.
You put all those things together, it's like you just buy the Chinese five spice. Chunking down would be something like IKEA furniture, right?
Right, okay.
So you see it, and both work, it's just whether you chunk up or chunk down. And he says in menus, like if you just get a menu, and again, I talked about this with Osh and Rory, is I think, or we would sort of bounce the ideas around, is why is Chinese food kind of, like, the place around Soho hasn't got as great a reputation, or not maybe got a great reputation, but isn't as big as, say, like Indian food, or why is it complex? And basically, Osh said, it's the menu. You go look at the menu, it's like overwhelming.
Yeah, completely
and
overwhelming.
If they chunked up and said, right, this stuff is fucking spicy, right? This stuff is soft, and it's like, and it's just the chunking.
Okay, so
start a main dessert.
So there's two things here. Let's take the chunking up and chunking down.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, because recently we went down and saw The Importance of Being Earnest with Stephen Fry.
I want to talk about him as well. Yeah.
Yes, he's such a nice guy, and it was a great production, absolutely fantastic. But we didn't have very much time before, so we just popped into a Chinese restaurant, and of course there were about, I don't know, 200 things on the menu, something like that, to look through. Well, okay, so my in order to reduce complexity, I went for noodle soup, and then I had a choice of about 6, and then I knew what I wanted in the noodle soup, which was fine, okay? And, my wife went for a couple of things that she knows she likes off this vast menu, when, you could have chosen anything, but actually we just went for stuff that we already knew. Now, that's fine about the psychology of it, and we do that at Bocca di Lupo. In fact, the reason why I decided to back Jacob in Bocca di Lupo was the menu structure. And the menu structure, for the first time I'd ever seen an Italian menu structure that made sense. Now, if you're not, now we've got a place in Italy and I speak Italian and I'm a bit more, I understand it a bit more. I'm much more at home with the way that Italians do menus. But that's not the audience for this place necessarily. It's people who like Italian food, know that, it's classically antipasti, pasta, and then secondi, and then dolce, and, understand that the classic thing, but don't quite get that you can pick what you want, and it doesn't really matter about the order. Nobody's going to take you through the classic English menu of, you've got to do these things in this order or whatever.
Sure.
And Jacob broke that completely by, if you look at the menu structure, you've got fritti, you've got frutti di mare, you've got then, pasta, there's padella from the saucepan, you've got whatever else it is in these categories. And then, genius, the first time anybody had really done this was small plates and large plates, with a pricing where the small plate was half the price of the large plate, even though the economics don't quite work out for the restaurant quite that way. But that's the way in which it. And suddenly this menu is accessible.